Something about the new McLaren for 2026 is setting off alarm bells behind the scenes. And no, it's not just another fast car. What's being whispered inside the paddock quietly and carefully is that Piastri's McL40 might be too fast, too efficient, too complete. Insiders suggest that a new hybrid system developed by Mercedes and hidden from public view has already forced the FIA to hold emergency meetings. The real concern? If McLaren hits the ground running, the 2026 season might be over before it even begins. And that's before we get to the part nobody wants to talk about. Officially, McLaren hasn't said much. There's no launch date, no official render, no simulation footage, not even a livery teaser. And that silence is louder than any press release. Because we're not talking about a midfield team managing expectations. We're talking about the reigning double world champions. A team that just crushed 2 seasons back-to-back. And instead of celebrating, they've gone dark. Completely dark. No media rounds. No previews. No technical deep dives. That's not standard behavior for McLaren. Not after years of rebuilding their image. Not after regaining the trust of fans, sponsors, and partners. And especially not when entering the biggest regulation shift in a decade. So why the silence? Because silence protects something. And in this case, it might be protecting an advantage. McLaren knows something. Or more specifically, McLaren has something. Not a concept. Not a theory. A car. A full-scale, closed development prototype built around the 2026 rulebook. And they don't want the rest of the grid seeing it too soon. They don't want questions asked. Not yet. Because if even half the rumors are true, the McL40 isn't just ready for 2026. It's already ahead of it. Let's be clear, 2026 isn't just another reset. It's a complete redefinition of how Formula One cars work. The wheelbase shrinks. The chassis narrows. The cars lose over 60 pounds. And most critically, the power units change forever. No more MGUH. MGUK output almost triples. And hybrid deployment becomes the core of race strategy, not just an assist. It's a new game. And McLaren? They may have cracked it early. This is where the conversation quietly shifts. From confidence to concern. Because once you move past the silence, the same name keeps appearing in every serious discussion. Mercedes. McLaren's decision to stay with Mercedes power for 2026 looked conservative at first. Safe. Predictable. Continuity over risk. But inside the paddock, that interpretation has changed. According to several sources close to engine development, the Mercedes PU26 isn't just competitive. It's behaving in ways the regulations were specifically designed to prevent. The most unsettling detail isn't peak power. It's consistency. Under the new rules, removing the MGUH should have made sustained hybrid deployment harder. More heat. More energy loss. More compromise over a lap. Yet internal dyno data reportedly shows the opposite. The Mercedes unit maintains electrical deployment without thermal drop-off. Lap after lap. No fading. No forced harvesting phases. That alone would be extraordinary. But the bigger issue is how it's achieved. Sources suggest the system dynamically reshapes energy release based on throttle input, grip levels, and battery temperature live, not pre-mapped. Not reactive. Predictive. In simple terms, the car doesn't wait for a problem. It anticipates it. And McLaren was the first team allowed to integrate this architecture fully. Not as a customer experiment, but as a development partner. Which means the McL40 wasn't designed around an engine. It was designed with it. And this is where rivals start to feel uncomfortable. Because if this system works as described, it doesn't just add performance. It removes trade-offs. No need to choose between qualifying pace and race management. No need to protect battery temperatures. No need to compromise aerodynamic load for deployment efficiency. It's not a boost. It's a platform. And that raises a far more serious question. If the power unit already behaves like this in isolation, what happens when it's fully integrated with McLaren's aerodynamics? Because that's where things may start to spiral. Up to this point, everything sounds like clever engineering, smart decisions, early preparation, maybe even luck. But this is where the story turns. Because if what's happening with McLaren and Mercedes is just innovation, then why is the FIA already reviewing simulation data that was never meant to be public? And why are multiple senior figures from teams who haven't even seen the car already pressuring for software clarification? This isn't just about speed anymore. It's about boundaries. The 2026 regulations weren't written to stop innovation. They were written to manage it. To prevent another era like 2014, when Mercedes arrived with such an advantage, the rest of the grid was irrelevant for years. The FIA made clear, No more loopholes. No more domination through systems others can't replicate. But here's the problem. Those rules rely on clear, measurable, isolated systems. You can regulate a wing. You can measure horsepower. You can monitor battery output. But what happens when all those elements are talking to each other? Dynamically. Faster than the FIA can define them? What McLaren may have created isn't a loophole. It's something harder to police. An intelligent performance layer that adapts the car around the driver in real time. Energy deployment changes the drag profile. The drag profile changes tire temperature. Tire temperature changes ERS harvesting. ERS harvesting affects thermal load on the rear brakes. The rear brakes feed thermal data into the battery cooling model. And this chain, this live feedback loop, isn't illegal. Because no rule prohibits it. No one thought to write that rule. Not yet. But here's where it gets even stranger. Back in December, during the public test days for active aero calibration, McLaren was absent. Ferrari was there. Red Bull was there. Even Williams ran a limited program. McLaren didn't show up. And at the time, the excuse was reasonable. Their development cycle was already complete. Their aero systems were being validated internally. But now? That absence feels deliberate. Because McLaren may not have needed public validation. They may have already built a system that integrates active aero with the hybrid powertrain. One that responds not just to track position, but to driver behavior, grip conditions, fuel mass, and energy targets. And here's the twist. If that's true, the FIA has no precedent to block it. Because this isn't illegal. It's undefined. And that's the most dangerous place to be in Formula One. A place between legality and comprehension. Where a team doesn't break the rules, but outpaces the ability to interpret them. On the surface, this is just a fast car. Efficient. Innovative. Maybe even clever. But what's quietly worrying some teams, and what the FIA won't say publicly, is that this might already be beyond the scope of regulation. Because Formula One doesn't just police components. It polices intention. And right now, no one fully understands McLaren's. That's what no one is explaining. The concern isn't just about deployment. It's about invisibility. McLaren's rumored system doesn't cheat the rules. It moves through them, linking legal subsystems into a behavior the rulebook never anticipated. And when the FIA looks at it, they don't see a violation. They see something worse. They see something they can't define. This isn't new. In 2019, Ferrari developed a fuel flow method that was never officially declared illegal, but caused enough suspicion to force a private settlement. No disqualification. No penalty. Just silence, and then a quiet drop in performance. In 2020, Mercedes introduced DAS dual-axis steering. Perfectly legal when it launched. Banned 1 season later. In 2021, Red Bull's flexing rear wing passed every test. Until the FIA changed the testing protocol itself. That's how Formula One handles gray zones. Not by rules, but by response. By precedent. And that's what makes McLaren's silence feel different. Because if they've built a platform that coordinates hybrid deployment, aero switching, and real-time thermal calibration, not by violating any rule, but by staying just outside the definition of one, then we're not talking about innovation. We're talking about regulation failure. And here's the thing. If McLaren didn't participate in the public active aero test sessions, if they've isolated their telemetry systems during private testing, if the FIA still hasn't received a full integration report on the PU26 software, then how much of this car even exists inside the FIA's oversight? And how long have they known? Some believe the real story started last summer. Back when Mercedes reportedly ran closed dyno tests on predictive cooling loops. Back when Piastri first began simulator work using a prototype interface not shared with Lando Norris. That may have been the moment the concept became real. And now, as teams prepare their final chassis for crash tests and launch events, McLaren has still released nothing. No times. No comparisons. No aero maps. Just silence. And the last time a team entered a new regulation era this quiet, it was 2014. And Mercedes never looked back. If McLaren really has done what people quietly suspect, then this isn't just a fast start. It's a structural realignment of the grid. Because this kind of advantage, this kind of integration, doesn't fade. It compounds. Let's start with Oscar Piastri. He's not just any driver. He's precise. He's methodical. He doesn't overdrive the car. And crucially, he doesn't need to. Which is exactly the kind of profile that thrives in a system where the car is doing real-time adaptation on its own. If this car really does optimize torque, grip, energy deployment, and aero resistance mid-lap, then the fastest driver won't be the one pushing hardest. It will be the one most in sync with the system. That's Piastri. He doesn't demand the car bend to him. He adapts to the car. And that could make him unstoppable. But that's just the beginning. For Lando Norris, defending his 2025 title, the situation becomes more delicate. He knows the team. He's seen this system evolve. But he's also entering a season where, for the first time, he's the hunted. And if Piastri starts extracting more from the car, if his natural synergy with the system gives him the upper hand early, how long does that internal equilibrium hold? This could become the most quietly explosive teammate rivalry in years. No drama. No public rift. Just pressure, silence, and data. But the bigger shift happens outside McLaren. Red Bull enters 2026 with a brand new Honda power unit. Clean slate. No customer teams. No early feedback. And if McLaren has already mapped deployment thresholds in 4 full-lap simulations per track, then Red Bull starts the season with a data gap they might never close. Ferrari? Their aero concept has been described as conservative. Stable, yes. But their power unit doesn't appear to offer dynamic energy control at this level. Which means one thing. If McLaren is running a multi-system sync model, Ferrari will have to chase efficiency from behind. And even Mercedes-McLaren's own engine supplier may find themselves outpaced by the very system they helped develop. Because if the works team didn't prioritize integration as early as McLaren did, they could end up running a less efficient version of their own platform. And here's the most important part. No one can copy this in 3 months. Not without re-architecting their chassis. Not without reprogramming their hybrid logic. Not without sacrificing reliability. Which means if McLaren is ahead by 0.4 a lap in Bahrain, they might be ahead by 6 in Imola, and a full second by Montreal. Not because they're cheating, but because the others are still playing by old rules. Still thinking in segments. Power, aero, cooling. McLaren may already be operating in systems. Live, interconnected, invisible to regulation. And that's why this is so dangerous. Because if the FIA doesn't step in, and if nothing goes wrong inside Woking, there may be nothing anyone can do to stop it. Not in time. So what happens next? That's the question everyone is quietly asking. And no one is answering. McLaren remains silent. No launch date. No wind tunnel data. No system disclosures. And now, the silence isn't just strategy. It feels like protection. Because if this car is what insiders believe it is, if it truly blends hybrid deployment with active aero and thermal feedback, then every additional day of secrecy is one less day for rivals to respond. And the FIA? They've seen the data. At least parts of it. And while they haven't made any public statements, there are already internal requests for clarification on how live energy feedback is being managed. But clarification isn't enforcement. And enforcement only happens after a car dominates. That's the danger. This isn't a protest waiting to happen. It's a delay. A gap. A space between what's real and what's regulated. And while that space exists, McLaren has room to run. Unchallenged. Because the only thing more powerful than technical superiority is institutional hesitation. And right now, the FIA is hesitating. Piastri, calm and clinical, is about to step into a car that may not just be fast. It may be a generation ahead. Not because it's illegal, but because no one saw it coming. And if it works, if the first 3 races confirm even half of what's been suggested, then the championship fight may collapse before it ever begins. But the story won't end there. Because if McLaren pulls away too fast, the FIA will have no choice but to react. New directives, mid-season clarifications, emergency regulation reviews. And once that door opens, we won't just be asking how McLaren built this car. We'll be asking, what else are they hiding? And more importantly, who knew and when? This might be the start of a dominant season, or the beginning of something far more complicated. Because the most dangerous car isn't the one that breaks the rules. It's the one that rewrites them, without saying a word.